I'd like to start by just asking, advocacy is really work to convince somebody else to support a cause, and very generally, usually humanitarian cause, social, cultural. And I'd like to start by asking Adrian, how would you describe nonprofit work? How would you distinguish it, advantages and disadvantages, compared to for-profit? And how do they get started? How does somebody go about starting one?
Well, I mean, Step Up for Mental Health is a startup, and I think of it that way. But I think of it as a small business. Um, it's all comes with an idea and passion. You have to have passion for the work, I believe. And it just for me, it came in. I'm going to use I statements. It came to me after my mom died, who suffered from mental illness, and it's been a passion of mine since I was 13, and so all my ideas sometimes comes at 12 o'clock midnight, and I wrote it down. I thought about a plan. I thought about a business plan. So you have to write that thing when you're literally becoming a board member. You have to write down your bylaws. You have to write down what your mission statement is. You have to write down everything that you want to express to communities and the world, what your ideas and how you're going to help people. And so that took about 6 months to a year to figure out what we wanted to do, what our programs were going to be about. And it's all about writing and creative writing, storytelling, a real, I'm always listening to people who are really doing great in their nonprofit. And I ask them, what should I do? What should I know about? And it's all about storytelling. If you don't have a good story, people won't donate, people won't understand what your mission is, and they won't be excited about it.
Great. Your nonprofit is Step Up for Mental Health.
Mhm.
Great. Could you just describe it, just briefly describe what they do for those not
So,
familiar?
so Step Up for Mental Health is simple. We are a peer-to-peer nonprofit, which people who are literally volunteers or staff, they have been through either issues with mental health or they're caregivers of people or family members of mental health, and they understand where you are. So we help individuals and family members, caregivers who are going through a crisis, whether it is short term, where, one moment people call a helpline, and they might ask for where is the local food bank? Because right now with the pandemic, everybody's asking for food right now. We've been feeding a lot of families. But also we do one-on-one peer chat. So people want to talk to somebody, and we do 4 weeks to 8 weeks of that. And people want to have a place to talk to, and sometimes families and friends, or there are people of color in particular who don't trust therapy in a way. We try to get them to that place, but sometimes they want to talk to a peer. So that's the nuts and bolts of it.
Right.
We have 4 programs, and we basically help people in many, many types of ways.
Yeah, that's excellent. Well, thanks. And Bonnie Jean, I'd like to ask you the same thing. How would you describe nonprofit advantages, disadvantages compared to for-profit, and how do you go about setting one up?
Well, actually, it's interesting. I am currently trying and working to set up a not for profit aimed at redefining beauty in our world. And I will say there's a lot of steps that go into setting up a not for profit. And as you notice, I'm saying not for profit, and we listed on the panel nonprofit. They're essentially the same thing. It's just different lingo used in the industry. And I've spent my years saying not for profit. There's really very little difference, and I don't want to belay that by trying to explain the differences that are minimal. So I want to just let you know that we will use them interchangeably here today, and that's often done in the field. As I'm setting up, there's a whole layer of going through, making sure you have a board of directors, making sure you have a mission statement, a business plan. You think of a not-for-profit as an organization that is out there working to do something good, but it's there also to make money for the something good It's there to make money for the people who are working, but not in a for-profit manner. So everything that is raised goes back into the cause and into the continual nature of the cause. So you have to still plan for that. You have to lay out your mission, your vision, your purpose, who you're going to help, how you're going to get that help. You know, I imagine that Adrian has folks in line in her network that are therapists that can help folks with mental health issues, that it's not just one person doing all the work. You have to have a team and a network that spans out, and you have to have an identity that you build up front, and you have to make sure that that is carried through. You know, when I started working with not-for-profits, I was 12 years old, and my first work was with Amnesty International, and it was a passion of mine to try to help end oppression. And I got involved because of an identity that was put on the international screen for me to see. And that identity that shaped my image of a foreign country ultimately shaped my entire work going forward because of that key vision and identity that was established in a not-for-profit organization. And that's what really you're trying to do when you create one, is create this legacy and this identity that 20, 30, 40 years later, you can still be working towards goals to try to end the thing that's bad or build up the thing that's good, depending on what it is.
Great, great. Thanks, Bonnie Jean. And Chad, to you, same question, you know. How would you describe nonprofit work, advantages, disadvantages, and you know, setting one up?
It's extremely dynamic, and there is a nonprofit for almost every single cause that you can imagine out there. Bonnie Jean touched on this a moment ago. Being a not-for-profit is simply a change in tax code. It is still a business, but it's a business that's led with a mission-forward approach. And in order to differentiate yourself, you have to be able to articulate that mission. And so the creative writing aspects that tie to a nonprofit's efficiency and efficacy in relating its mission, not only externally to all of its stakeholders and supporters, but internally, is extremely vital. And so when you're putting together, I guess, kind of the skeleton of how a nonprofit's going to communicate, you have one arm tying to the advocacy heart of your question that is really educating, informing, and activating a community. But then you have the other arm that's actually expressing the work, articulating how the work is impacting the community, involving those who have the particular need that you're addressing, understanding how they can navigate those channels to get the services or types of support they need. And then it's tying those two together into the body of how do you connect someone who cares about your cause to the actual outcomes that you're trying to achieve with your cause. So it's a lot to unpackage, and we're definitely not going to cover it all in 1 hour, but it is extremely important to recognize there are the professional levels of the writing involved, those mission statements and bylaws and other things mentioned. And then there are the more creative aspects. We're really all problem solvers at heart. Mission always ties to a problem that needs a solution. And so being able to move from what was traditional for many decades, just writing a letter basically that said, here's what we do, please help us. Or writing a script to stand in front of a camera and say, here's what we do, please help us. Being sent across fax machines or articles in newspapers or in magazines, moving into today's world where information is fast, it's furious, it's oftentimes not fully digested. It's no longer white sheets about a mission and cause and facts. Instead, it's headlines that grab your attention, move you emotionally, and then take you to the next level, whatever that action is that you're trying to hook your audience for. So those are the things that we're going to keep touching on in this hour, and probably even more so in the classes that are part of this creative writing certificate.
Yeah, that's great. And I'd have to say, from my own perspective, having worked about 17 years in mid-management in industry, and then moving to 17 years of work in mid-management in a huge nonprofit, it was about 1,800 people, 300 million in contracts. There's a significant difference in the industrial world for profit. At the end of the day, everything comes down to money, and everybody's concerned ultimately about their paychecks and career. In the nonprofit, there's an equal concern about the organization's finances and salary, of course, but within the nonprofit, everybody feels more closely connected to the company, including IT staff, computer programmers, graphic designers, because every single person working there understands the mission and feels like they're contributing something more to the world than just collecting a paycheck. It's a really great feeling.
You got it.
Well, I'd like to ask, you know, we talk about creative writing in nonprofits. So, you know, let's talk a little bit about what types of writing we commonly find in advocacy work. So, and how do these types of writing fit in, right? So, for example, we've got storytelling, fiction, poetry, screenwriting, elements of the creative writing certificate. How do those fit into like publicity, you know, promotion, educational writing, grant writing, and the other requirements of nonprofit work? And I'll ask in reverse. I'll ask Chad first. What do you think?
When it comes to advocacy, I think that we have moved into an era. Actually, let me backstep real quick. It is going to depend on the size of the nonprofits too. So you have those large national nonprofits that have a machine, that have people who are responsible for data, people responsible for communications, people responsible for every facet. And then you have more commonly the smaller nonprofits like ourselves who hover around 50 employees or less and are tied directly to a grassroots mission within our community. So that's the background I speak from, just as a qualifier, as we talk to it a little bit more about advocacy. I believe, this is my own personal values and what I've seen and observed, that we are making the shift from what was a more traditional annual appeal, letters arriving at your home asking you to write a check and send it back into a cause, to something that is more shorter words, action focused, and easy to digest at a reading level that is easily comprehensible. And so that's a major shift, especially for a lot of us who've been involved in the creative writing of the nonprofit sphere for years. To move to something that is tied to quick comprehension. So those short bites that are meaningful, that create an emotional response, but are activating you to then move to the next level of absorption about what it is that you're actually advocating for and how you can effectively advocate for it. So we're kind of changing the way that we used to approach things, where we give you a nice long letter that by the end of it, hopefully you're drying the tears from your eyes and you've got your checkbook in your other hand and you're supporting your cause. Speaking from a fundraising standpoint, to where you read it and you said, okay, that's important to me, so I'm going to hit the like button on my mobile device, and then I might share it with a group of friends, but where do I move to next? And that's where the creative writing takes your story, like Adrian was sharing, and uses that story as the vehicle to move you to make it part of your story. So what are you going to go out and do now that's going to help somebody else learn about it or help somebody else get involved with it? There's a lot to that. So I want to share the time with our other panelists too, to describe it in their opinion in detail as well.
Sure. So Bonnie Jean, you know, we think about poetry, fiction, you know, the traditional forms of creating writing. How do you see those fitting in with the writing in advocacy?
I think they're essential. Not only do you use the skills to actually do creative writing, poetry, plays, things along those lines, or works along those lines, you can use the skills of creative writing, thinking outside the box in your biography writing. When I was working with the Chicago Ensemble in the city, I would recreate their bios so it told their story in a way that actually made people want to read the bios. They were consistent. They were all capturing the same essence of why music was important. And that was essential to getting people to not only come to the concerts and see these performers, but make donations. When I was working with a theater company in Chicago as well, they were working on teaching literacy through creating plays with the kids. And their big fundraiser was actually putting on a play for the parents, for the community, for the neighborhoods. And it was very grassroots in its nature, but that was how they made the money. The plays were written by the kids for the most part. They were developed products. In fact, all of the kids would create like a Shark Tank scenario where they created a product that they then tried to sell and get investors in. And all of this was to help teach kids to be successful in their future. And we did that not through writing a letter to ask people for money because it's important, but by showing them the action of teaching these kids. And by showing it, instead of just telling people in a letter, we were able to raise more money and do more work down the road and put on better plays and have more kids come into the training program as they continue to grow each summer. So it's that really that mentality of the show, don't tell. And what I see this creative writing coming into the work of advocacy with not-for-profits is this greater effort to show and not tell, using the videos that Chad is talking about, or going out there with a protest where you've written some lines to help tell the story. All of that comes together in a mission to show what you're trying to accomplish and show the change you're trying to create. And ultimately that translates into someone crying a little bit and pulling out that checkbook.
Oh, it's amazing. You know, when I hear you all talk about the various forms and the dynamicism and the energy, it's just, you know, it's pretty exciting. And Adrian, earlier, you talked about sort of this fusion of writing, website design, graphic design, video, all of this coming together constantly. How do you see that interplay between, you know, the traditional creative writing and advocacy?
I'm glad you asked that question because I was just thinking along those lines. For me, as a creative person, I'm always thinking about the full picture. So I'm thinking about branding. You know, I think one of the things that I think nonprofits miss, you know, there's a lot of nonprofits out there who have the most crappiest websites on the planet. And it's just, it drives me insane as a person, like, you know, thinking about branding and communications and how things should look. I mean, Instagram, for example, is so important because of how all the graphics look. So when I'm thinking about something about branding, and I'm thinking about passion. So for us as a nonprofit, I think about what do you want to convey? And that means everything. We're talking about tools. I'm a person who, you must have tools, just like you have in the real world. We use a tool called Asana. It's a project management tool. It's a gorgeous piece of software. And then that gets people excited about writing, what they want to write about. They see the imagery, you know? So I'm a person who creates the imagery sometimes, most of the time, some people do it. And then from that imagery, how are you going to tell this story? And so I'm thinking about just not words. I'm thinking about how are you going to connect this with as a branding. Branding for us was the #1 goal because I've seen such really bad websites in the nonprofit space. So I wanted to have a good brand, have great colors. I'm a purple person. Everything had to be using our same types of content that we like to talk about on our websites or in our, you know, our social media channels, and then also about our printing. And so everything that our volunteers do, they can take it out in the world and apply it in a real job. They can put that on their resume. And that's what I think about when I'm talking about our branding, talking about how we're going to tell a story. We're using all those type of tools.
Great. So, you know, we're really talking about skills beyond just writing then. It's not like a person gets a writing degree or certificate and then they go out and they just write. It's a lot of other things too. So, you know, Adrian, you just mentioned quite a few other tasks, other skills. Are there specific things, you know, specific things that you value in volunteers or employees when it comes to, for example, social media strategies, the technical execution of managing and manipulating Instagram or whatever,
Yeah.
Writing for the web, graphic design, layout, you've been talking about branding. Are there any, you know, if I'm in the creative writing certificate program and I want to supplement or complement my fundamental basic writing skills with other skills, what do you think they would be?
I mean, I think it's a couple ways. I mean, you can do analytic stuff where you're actually writing ad campaigns. We have partnership with Google. And so I'm always trying to think about, I used to work at a dental association too, which is kind of like a nonprofit. And we sat there for days trying to figure out the perfect bite of a title. And so I'm always thinking about, oh, let's look at the title, that we shouldn't use that word. We should change this a little bit. So this is part of the everyday work environment when you're trying to be creative, but you're trying to have bite-sized information like Chad was talking about. It's not about the long, paragraph. It's not about the 1,000 words. It's about how can you share some information in 140 character? How can you share information and in metadata that you need to make sure that Google finds? I'm always thinking about that. Not only teaching people how to think about search, think about the title, think about sharing your story in bite-sized parts, so we can put it on Instagram, which is longer, and Facebook, and you can put it on Twitter, which is only 230 characters now. So we have to do it for every different network, and so it's always a challenge, but it's a fun challenge.
Adrian,
yeah, go ahead, Chad.
I was just going to say, Adrian's spot on. Developing the core of your brand is important. You can see I threw up a sign and a t-shirt behind me that help people visually associate. But really, it's carrying the core of that brand across all the different channels, which communicate differently and build audiences differently. We're in uncharted territory. This is a very new area of expertise when it comes to communicating not only effectively to the end user, the viewer, but like Adrian's talking about, words are now monetized. There's a monetary value to the words that you use. And so you may adjust the strategy of what you're writing so it gets picked up in the right algorithm. So that way you reach that wider audience that you're trying to connect to. And that is a big shift too for us to have to think psychologically, not only about the emotional value of our words, but the actual monetary value of our words in order to be able to reach that next level of audience when communicating electronically, which we're doing more and more these days.
Yeah.
Right. Bonnie Jean, how do you,
Yeah, brand is brand is brand. I mean, we can't say that enough. I mean, that's why I'm a brand strategist. Whether you're working in the not-for-profit or the for-profit realm, you have to have a true identity and know who you are and share that across the platform. But you also have to be able to actually create all the material to do that with. And I think it's essential to, if you can't do it yourself, have a team that can build whatever you're trying to build. And while I do have a background in graphic design, at some point I realized I wasn't going to keep up with all the new programs. So I created a team. I hired someone onto my team who does the design work, and I learned a little bit more about design in the process. But I think that every good word strategist, writer, creative manipulator of words should have at least a bit of an understanding of how things look, how you shape things. Because if you can't create something that looks good, why would you want to be part of it? And why would your donors want to be part of it? We talk about a not-for-profit being about who we're servicing and the purpose they're trying to solve, but part of the mission is having volunteers in that mission to help the people or the cause that you're trying to help. And that's just as important as the actual mission, I think.
So
go
ahead, Adrian.
I just want to say a point there, because I was just thinking about that. We have a help desk, and that's the a lot of our programs helping people. I just helped a senior today who had no food for 3 days, and I drove to his house and give him a bag of groceries. But I always talk to my writing staff. I talk to them and I say, you don't get to touch and see the people that we're helping, but you're helping because your words, your stories, your articles are telling the story that people are coming to our website and say, oh, what is this? And they're looking around and seeing our mission and our programs. And so I tell them all the time, though you don't get to see the people, your point of view is really making a point. Your social media posts that you're posting for us is making a difference, because people are seeing that information so they can know who we are.
So you're using creative descriptive or actually creative writing skills to help your own staff, your teams understand and guide what they're doing, right? So
Absolutely.
really creative writing skills come into play in the material, the communications directed at the audience, but also within your own project teams.
That's right.
And that helps to enable their skills to effectively communicate as well, because ultimately every staff member is an ambassador for your mission, and they're going to touch to different groups of stakeholders in different ways. So being able to have a consistent message that is capable for all of your employees to share across the board. Our example here, our mission is to end homelessness. And the way that we accomplish that is by combining housing with intensive support services and employment and career services as our solution. Short, simple, it's almost like the elevator pitch, but it gives you the idea of what the key elements are that you're trying to communicate. But if you haven't effectively communicated that internally, then there's no way for your ambassadors to feel confident and comfortable going out there and explaining that externally.
Yeah,
And I would agree completely, Chad and Adrian, both, that having that message, that key thing, and recognizing the different parts each person plays and the versatility of your packaging, so that you have that standard mission, but then one person can go reach out to a certain age group or a certain target, and another person can reach out to another target. And because they have an understanding of the core of the message, then how you go about it, what platform you're using, what website, what video, that becomes the visual display of those words that you're monetizing in terms of how much is ending homeless worth? How much is mental health worth?
Right. And having worked in one of the huge machine-like nonprofits that Chad mentioned earlier, and having people report to me, computer programmers, all they do is write code, and IT server administrators and help desk technicians like Adrian managed. I found the most effective way to keep them engaged and motivated was to help them understand how their work is supporting the mission. And one of the best things to do is connect those to the subject matter experts in education, the people in the field during the design of websites, so they could all get a sense of why this website's so important, whose lives it's touching, and how that goes back to whatever role they've got in it, So it's a lot of the storytelling, and in teamwork for me, it was helping people imagine almost like a play. This project is like this play that's going to roll out, and here's your role, here's your role, here's your role, and here's the script, and here's how we got to pull it off to make it effective, So I think it's fascinating how it sounds like what we're all describing is how the writing is inseparable from this whole huge dynamic, passionate, to use Adrian's word, enterprise of trying to help people. It's really, really interesting.
One of the questions we discussed as a panel, Scott, and forgive me if I'm jumping ahead, is the roles and how different roles within our nonprofit sphere are involved in creative writing. And so I challenged myself to audit internally for a minute our organization. Again, I mentioned around 50 people, and I was trying to find a role that did not use creative writing. And so as I was whittling down, I got close to it with accounting, and I thought I had it. I had our accountants who were doing all the record keeping and everything. And so then I talked to our accountants, and they said, well, actually, in the audit process, when we have to write about how different exceptions are and things, we have to make sure that we communicate that effectively. So they're creatively writing that statement in order to explain why it is that we did X instead of Y, or whatever the case may be. So I failed. My mission was to find at least one role that doesn't use creative writing, and I couldn't find even one in what we do. It touches so many ways. One of the roles, then I flipped that over and said, who uses it the most? One of the roles where creative writing really becomes key is in our grant writing and facilitating, again, going back to monetizing words. It can be something as simple as a local grant with a community service club organization, or a national grant with a multi-million-dollar company. And so you have to change your writing style to speak to your audience. And again, you have to creatively express what it is that you're asking them to support. So making that case for support clear and concise. But oftentimes we don't get to set the parameters. It is the person accepting the grants that say, I want 200 words or less. So just spit it out and make it clear. Or I'm going to give you several different blocks. and want you to answer specific questions. And that's where you really have to get creative and be agile with the way you use words and numbers to effectively communicate how their support of your mission is critical, but also how your mission is successful, all wrapped into one beautiful package. And those are where some of the best creative writers really bubble up to the top and succeed.
Adrian, looks like
I
you
just want to add, because I'm a tech person and a creative person too at the same time. I mean, I think it's at the point now, communication design, marketing, you have to know tech too. You have to know CRMs. You have to know how to input data. I'm talking about creative data onto the website, onto systems. And so if I can just stress that point, learn some of the tools, even if you have to volunteer on your, a little bit here and there. Kind of like, I did a volunteer thing. I wanted to know more about social media, back in the day. And I literally volunteered at a place that was really cool. And for a year, because I was a social media producer, and I took all that content and all that knowledge and landed a really great job back before by nonprofit in a dental association. So everything you do that you want to learn, there's a job, there's an opportunity, an internship or volunteer role or part-time job that you can put on your resume that's going to advance your skill set. And tech and creative goes hand in hand now. It just does.
And I would agree completely with that, Adrian. And the idea that having versatility and being open to learn anything and everything is really key. The mark of a good creative writer is somebody that tells a story and makes it believable. So if you're writing a novel, for instance, you have to create an entire world. You create the characters, you create the streets, you create the buildings. Even if you're using a town that already exists, you still have to create your fictional neighborhood and your fictional characters that go along with that neighborhood that exemplify or shift or shape what's going on in that story. That's the same thing with a not-for-profit. Being in the work that I do, that I run a business that works with different not-for-profits, it has taught me to be able to pivot constantly. And every different group I work with has a different message, has a different story to tell, has different aspects of the story. And in some ways, I'm a little jealous of my co-panelists here because they work for one organization and they can stay on point and pivot within their messaging. At the same time, I'm very happy that I've had this opportunity to be versatile and go from different industries, different services, different missions across the board, and it's given me this ability to just weave in and out of different identities and really capture what's called voice. And for those of you who are in classes and learning about creative writing, the voice that you're trying to communicate from is very important. And if you'll indulge me for 30 seconds, let me tell you a little story and why voice matters in this story. And Chad will appreciate this one a little bit. When I was 18, I volunteered at the local homeless shelter in DeKalb, Illinois, Hope Haven, Illinois. Actually, I was there volunteering before I turned 18. On my 18th birthday, I decided to go ahead and work my regular midnight to 7 a.m. shift because why not? I'm 18 years old. I'm young. I can do it, right? This particular night, I was feeling extra rebellious, and I allowed one of the people we were servicing, a woman who had been homeless for a while, to come out of the sleeping area. The rules were they weren't supposed to be outside the sleeping area in the overnight. But I broke the rules. I said, come on out. And we shared a lot of words that night. We just talked about everything that you can imagine for multiple hours. And for the first time in a long time, she actually felt listened to. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged somewhere that was important. Fast forward a few years, I had long since stopped volunteering at the shelter. She had moved on with her life, all because of the opportunity that was put in place that day for two people to come together and share words. And that story ultimately shaped her life in a way that gave her the courage to change her circumstances and gave me the courage to remember that I am making a difference simply because I participated in the story. That story can then be leveraged to tell people and show people that, hey, whether you're on the receiving end or the giving end, there's something to be learned here and obtained here, and that ultimately can create change, make money, and it's all because of a story that brings forth knowledge about what's going on in the mission. And that's what we really try to do. And I know Chad's trying to do that with some of the videos he's creating, and I imagine Adrian is doing the same thing, that those stories are really at the ground because humans are the voice that matters.
That's a great takeaway, Bonnie Jean. That's really powerful. And Adrian, is there anything that you would like students to take away from hearing the panelists today?
For me, I think, because I'm so passionate about touching one family at a time, and I'm kind of going with Bonnie Jean on this. We all have to kind of like get the information, the data. Though like today, you know, like I said, I went to feed a person today, and I'm thinking about that person. How are you doing? You know, we're going to help you do this, and you're gonna have a peer facilitator who's going to call you today, that kind of thing. But then in between that, I have to like, we're a small nonprofit. Can I take your picture? Can I take a picture because we might use it? We have to, you know, do the kind of thing because we're small. Oh, some people, you can say no, you can say, oh, no. But the mask has actually been helpful for people, especially with mental health. People are like, yeah, I'll take my picture because I want to help you. They want to help because they say you're helping me, and I still have to kind of like share the story. So I have to get a picture so we can say, look what we did. And then that picture comes to life in a story, in creative writing, that we're going to post on Instagram or Facebook and say, we help this person, we use a different name or whatever we use, but we tell the true story about helping someone who needed it at this moment. And so I do it every day. I'm thinking across, as a person who's, you know, executive director, I'm thinking about every scope of things. But and then someone else is going to take that and write the story, or I might write the story. Sometimes I just do it. And then I might put it on Asana and I say, can you post this by these 3 days? So it's, you know, it's always constant. But basically I want people to know our story, and I need to do a better job of it. And then people can see what we really do.
Excellent. Chad, takeaway for the students today?
Keeping within the context of creative writing affecting social change, I will add or tie back to the emotional marketing value of your words. So in marketing in general, applying creative writing is usually to buy or utilize a service. But particularly in the nonprofit world, it is to support or make a service possible. And so you have to have some sort of a tool to measure what is the emotional value of the words that you're using. One of the major shifts we're seeing across nonprofit communications is it is less about the nonprofit itself. So, for example, we fed a family of 4 today, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, to being about the hero, the supporter, the end user, the funder. Because of you, we could afford to put 3 meals on the table of a family today. That's a change in the writing shift. That's an emotional hook that creates a sense of, I'm part of the hero in the story. I'm tied to what was the outcome because of volunteering my time, because of dropping off some non-perishables in a box, or because of the check I wrote or the online form with my credit card I filled out. It has to tie back to that emotional quotient that's going to really activate a person to become involved in your story and see themselves as part of it. So not only great storytelling to inform or to activate, but to actually absorb yourself into the story and feel like you're a part of that fabric is really where I think we're reaching to next. And so if you're considering applying your creative writing skills to that, consider moving away from the I and, you know, the we, empirically speaking, to the you, and how us are going to create that change, how we're effectively going to end homelessness. That's where we're at with our creative writing now, is shifting our journey from telling you about how well we're doing it to how you are now a part of it, and you're going to make sure that we do it even better going forward in the future. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's great. So Trina, I know you've been watching the chat. Do we have any questions from students?
I have one question so far, so if anyone wants to add any, feel free. The question is, what is the best avenue for an emerging writer to get employment at a nonprofit? A degree, levels of experience? Can anyone speak to that question? So the best avenue for an emerging writer.
I think as somebody who has done a lot of versatile writing, one of the best ways is to get out there and do it. Find something you believe in and volunteer. Start there. Eventually you can work that into a career or a different type of career, depending on if you want to work in a not-for-profit or work in a for-profit working with not-for-profits like I've done, but get out there and actually do it. Getting the degree is great. I'm all for getting degrees. I have training in writing. I have training in communication. I have multiple degrees, but the actual act of writing and learning and listening was really what got me to where I'm at today with regard to my writing and my creative writing in the workplace.
Anybody else? Adrian?
I would say too, because I'm always interviewing people, and my go-to question all the time, I ask them, "What's your 3 passions?" Because sometimes there are different degrees of nonprofits, and then you have a role. Our nonprofit is a little different. I tend to try to match a person who has interest in mental health with their passion, because when people are passionate about what they do, whether it is a writer who wants to expand their digital skill footprint, or somebody who wants to be in social work and they still have to write because they have to do all the summary notes and everything.
Yeah.
I always ask about passion. And it's because people don't think about that, but people come and want to apply for a role. And I realize when they tell me their passion, that's not the role they really should be doing. I'm like, well, you seem like you're saying this right here. You seem like you love writing. You seem like you want to work with kids. You see what I said. So why did you apply for this role? Oh, I don't know. I just kind of saw that one. Well, let's go ahead and shape it to what you want to do, because we have so many things that we can do. And then that's what we do. I'm always looking for people, especially who want to write for us. I give them different opportunity, different ideas. And then they're like, I said, come back with me with a plan, come back with me with a sample of something. And then that gets them, I just had a couple people, you know what? I kind of want to do this now. And so passion. And then that's the only way you're going to get it to really know what you want to do is, can I volunteer a little bit on it or something else? And then you'll really kind of pinpoint what you really want to do in your career for money and things like that.
So thank you so much. So we have 3 questions, and maybe we'll leave it at those last 3. So are you guys ready for 3?
Yeah.
The first one really plays into what Adrian just said about passion. So this student writes, I'm planning on going into social work and I'm interested in advocacy work. I loved writing growing up, so I would like to strengthen my writing skills for my future career. I want to be as versatile as possible in my future workplace. How did you find your niche before starting your nonprofit? And how did you solidify the cause you are advocating for?
Wow.
I'm laughing because I don't think I ever found a niche.
Okay.
Because I kept trying to find a niche, trying to find where I belonged, and I ended up being versatile enough and listening enough that I can be in multiple niches, so to speak. But I know that's not typical, and I would love to hear what Chad or Adrian have to say on that, because for me, finding a niche never worked, and I had to go against the grain because that's who I am, and not have a niche, and that's been a help and a hindrance in my career. But I want to hear from the others on their thoughts on that.
Adrian, this question is uniquely suited for you as
Oh my
someone
God,
who's
this is so
developed that
me.
from the ground.
I mean, you know what? I mean, that's so true. I think we might be the same. Maybe that's why people start, you start your own business. I start, founders and not nonprofit. I could not find my niche. I've done many things. I've worked with deaf kids in a mental hospital. And I learned writing from that, because let me tell you, you have to write everything that happened that day with your clients or your peer groups or whatever you're into social work. So you have to write when you're doing a peer led thing, you have to write what happened. And in those notes, every social work person, every psychologist or therapist have to write what happened in their session. And you have to become really great at trying to explain all things that's happening so the next person can read it. So I think for me, I have many types of talents. I'm in tech, I'm in, graphic design, I'm in, social work and that kind of thing. You won't know it until you try it and test it. And the best way to do is volunteer in that way, or get a job in some way, or consult. I consulted a lot for many years because I was passionate about something. I was passionate about writing. I was passionate about podcasting. I was passionate about all those types of things. And then once you found it, I find it now in my own nonprofit. So everything I wanted to do, I'm doing it now.
That's awesome. Okay, so this next question, what's the easiest way? I'm always like skeptical of the word easy, right? Because I don't know if anything is easy, but what is the easiest way? What does it look like to start your own business, whether it be nonprofit or for-profit? And maybe this is what you spoke to earlier with Bonnie Jean when you were saying this is how you're starting, or this is how you're going about starting your nonprofit. I don't know.
Yeah, well, yeah. I would say the easiest way is to hire someone to help you do it, but not everybody has the means to hire someone. And so the question then becomes, what do you know? You need to go out and learn what you don't know. And one of the things I love doing is actually helping new businesses set up, because I made a lot of mistakes. I could fill a book of my mistakes, and maybe someday I will do that. But and so I use my mistakes to help others not make the same mistakes. And that's whether I'm working in writing with creative writing, or helping someone brand a business or write a book. It doesn't really matter. You want to listen to those who came before you. I think that's really important. And if you're setting up a not-for-profit, I'm not trying to rush in. I'm actually looking forward to connecting with Adrian later, knowing that she started her own not-for-profit, because then that will help me to know what she did, so I don't do those same errors that she may have made. Not that she
many.
But also I'll make my own new errors, and I want to do it right. I don't want to set it up, haphazard. I've known people who've set up a not-for-profit haphazard, and they're always chasing their tail. And I don't want to chase my tail. I want to set it up in the right way, and I want to listen to the people who came before me, so I do that. And I think that's an important lesson. Whether you're setting up a for-profit or a nonprofit, it doesn't matter. It's the same principle.
Okay, thank you so much. So another question, are there available internships? Do any of the panelists have any opportunities through your organizations for internships? Or should they check your website?
Yes. Yes. Check our website.
Check your website.
Okay. We're going to resume formal internships. It's something we put on hiatus during COVID, but we're looking at. But the term internship can be interchanged with volunteerism. So it may not be for credit, but volunteering is something both Adrian and Bonnie Jean have mentioned several times. If you want experience with an organization, volunteer. And more so, if you're thinking about applying your creative writing skills, journal about your volunteer experience.
Yeah.
A product of volunteerism turned to employment. I volunteered for the causes that were passion for me, that were part of my core values, and ended up being completely led astray from the career path and life path I thought I had, because I fell in love with the causes that I was volunteering with and found a way to uniquely apply my skills. And that last part is important. Be selective. Pick the place that you want to be with. And if there's not something available, wait or find another place that is what you want to be a part of. Far too often, I see people with great intentions come forward and apply for positions within our organization or at others. And once you're finally sitting across the table from them, this ties back to the passion Adrian was mentioning a moment ago. They say, well, I just really like your mission, so I wanted to come work here. And it doesn't speak anything or equate in a real direct way to the position they're applying for. They just love what you're about, and so they wanted to be a part of it. Well, if that's the case, come and volunteer with us. Make sure that what you're applying for is uniquely suited to you. Be selective about it, and make sure that you have a plan for how you're going to apply it. That's where the journaling comes back to. If you're a creative writer and you're writing about your experiences being involved with a cause or a particular agency, then you have examples you can come back to and show them that's actually unique to what they're doing. It's a great way to tie into it. Another thing I saw was career opportunities for adults who are busy earning the certificate. That can be really hard right now, especially in these strained economic times that I know that we're experiencing. So if you can't find a way to join as an employee of the nonprofits that you're passionate about, look and see if there are consulting services or other ways that you can get involved in the nonprofit sphere as a contractor available for smaller projects. And the last part I would say is get a library card. For those of you that were talking about starting your own business, when you start looking for those things online, oftentimes someone's going to try to sell you something. Almost 9 times out of 10, there's going to be some sort of clickbait or something at the end that says, buy my product and I'll tell you how. And you end up spending more money on something that you could have just as easily with your free COD library card or any other library around, went in, got the book, sat down, read about, and educated yourself about. So start there first if you're really serious about it. Don't Google it. Go pick up a book, crack it open, read about starting a business, and get real comfortable with tax codes. It is a real part of the universe that we work in, understanding whether you do it as a contractor or operating your own business. Knowing the tax code in and out is going to be vital to your success, and what obligations come with it, from writing bylaws to putting together a budget and spreadsheets. I mean, that's a whole rabbit hole to go down, but start with that library card. I highly recommend it.
Sorry, Adrian.
I just want to say one quick thing. If you're going to be a creative writer and you want to show your work, please have a great website. Please have a great website and show your best work, because most people are going to say, you got samples? So make sure it's there.
And I wanted to add that I do also have, well, I call them apprenticeships, and I do have apprenticeships, some paid, some not paid. It depends on if you sign on to work with a particular client or not. But I have that, and I agree with everything Chad says. This is why I do free consultations with people, because, and I listen and I give them lots of good advice for free before I even consider asking them to hire me, because sometimes it's not best for them to hire me, and I would rather tell them the truth and send them on their way than, just ask for money. And these clickbait places are all over the place. I just spoke with a woman today in a consultation who, she went with a self-publishing company, and they took her money and they published her book, and then it sat on a virtual shelf for 4 years. And she's like, it's crazy out there. So just remember to check, the material and the resources in the library. It could be your friend.
I just want to thank you guys so much for sharing your knowledge. I cannot get over how much you shared within 1 hour. Like, I feel like I've learned a semester's worth of material in 1 hour. So that's amazing. And thank you to everyone listening and joining us. We do have a link in the chat to a document that kind of goes over what we covered here. And I just wanted to offer special thanks to those involved in the programming here. So really quickly, our advisory committee, to Jen Butler, to Sandra Martins, to Kathy Walker, Amy McConnell, Joan DePurio, and then obviously to Scott Buckley, Bonnie Jean Alford, Chad Pedigo, Adrian McHugh, and Kristen Senna, who was not able to be here with us today. So thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We can't wait for the next panel, hopefully next semester, and we wish you all a successful semester. Thank you all.